Hello, my name is Ben Teacher, and today we are going to learn about instruments of the world. Now, let's think about instruments. What instruments can you think of? Do you play an instrument? Check the instruments you know in your worksheet. We have the violin, the xylophone, the saxophone, the French horn, and the trumpet. So remember to check the ones you know in your worksheet. Now, before we get started, let's practice some of our new words for today. Instrument. We are going to learn about different instruments. Here are a few, like the guitar, the tambourine, the drums, the maracas. Instrument. Vibrate. This is a vibrating cymbal on a drum set. To vibrate is to shake really hard. Vibrate. Okay, percussion. The drums are a kind of percussion instrument. We are going to see a few more in just a moment. Percussion. Traditional. This looks like a traditional dance. A lot of instruments have a traditional role in different countries and cultures. Traditional. Brass instruments. Brass instruments. These are some famous brass instruments. We're going to see a few more in just a moment. Brass instruments. Indigenous. Indigenous people are native to their land. So these are some indigenous people around the world, and we're going to learn about some of their unique instruments. Indigenous. String instrument. So here we have one kind of string instrument. This one's pretty easy. It's an instrument with strings, and we're going to learn more about it in just a moment. Produce. Produce, to make something, to create something, produce. Wind instrument. So this is one kind of wind instrument. And buzzing. Now, some instruments, you need to make a buzzing sound with your lips. Buzzing. Strum. We talked about string instruments. Some instruments you need to strum, like the guitar or the harp. Strum. Some instruments you need to pluck. Sometimes you pluck a violin or a banjo or a guitar, depending on what kind of music you like to play. Scratch. Cats like to scratch. Here's a cat scratching a record. Scratch. All right. Now let's listen to the instruments. Listen closely. See if you can hear. Oops, see if you can tell what sound it is. Ready? Here we go. All right. What did you hear? What kind of instrument could that be? Ready? It's an organ, a church organ. All right. Number two, let's listen. All right, so this one sounds a little funnier. That first one sounded kind of scary. This one sounds a little sillier. What can it be? It's a trombone. This looks like a trombone player with his band on the train. That must be a really loud train. Oh my goodness. Number three. This one sounds kind of funny too. Have you heard this instrument? It's a cowbell. All right, now that we've heard a few different instruments, let's learn about the instrument families. So, One instrument family is the string instrument family. String instruments, whoops, String instruments come in many shapes and sizes. And by the way, don't forget to follow along in your worksheet because we're going to be filling in the blanks and answering questions. Now, let's listen to a song played on string instruments. Can you guess what it is? And that is enough. Did you guess it? If you said, whoops, let's stop that. If you said Harry Potter, you are correct. Love that song. All right. So, the sounds of string instruments come from strings being strummed, plucked, or bowed. So, here we have the harp. Usually, you strum the harp. Here's the guitar being plucked. You can strum the guitar too, but this one's being plucked. And some instruments are bowed, like we just saw for Harry Potter. There's the violin, there's the cello, and there's the guitar. So fill in the blanks on your worksheet, and let's keep going. Now we're going to learn about woodwind instruments. Let's hear a little music on the woodwinds, and let's see if you can guess this song. Ready? All right. Can you guess? If you said The Incredibles, you are correct. Also a great movie. All right, let's talk about our woodwind instruments. Woodwind instruments produce sounds when air is blown in and vibrates inside. So, some of the famous instruments from the woodwind family are the flute, the clarinet, there's the clarinet, and the saxophone. Boop. So once again, make sure you are writing in your worksheet. And let's learn about the brass instruments. So we're going to hear a song on brass instruments. See if you can guess what it is. All right, the brass instruments are pretty loud. So, did you guess the song? That's right, it's The Little Mermaid. Good job. Now, brass instruments are made of metal tubes and get their sound from the player's buzzing lips. Some brass instruments include the trumpet and the French horn. Some of the famous instruments from this family are the trumpet and the French horn. All right, now let's learn about percussion instruments. Let's hear one more song and let's see if we can guess where it's from. All right, I think most of you guys already know this one. It is Frozen. All right. So this is the xylophone. The xylophone is one percussion instrument. Most percussion instruments make sounds when they are hit, like a drum or a tambourine. Others are shaken, rubbed, or scratched. So there's one. There's the tambourine. Some famous instruments in this family are the bass drum and the tambourine. Here's a xylophone. Here's another tambourine. The piano, by the way, is also a percussion instrument, even though it doesn't look like one. Inside, there are little hammers knocking around to make notes. So, instruments around the world. We learned about a few different instruments. Now let's look at instruments in different countries. One of them is the steel drum. The steel drum is a blah 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 instrument from Trinidad and Tobago. What kind of instrument do you think it is? Percussion, woodwind, or brass? Well, it's a drum, so it is percussion. The steel drum is a percussion instrument. Let's hear a little bit of how it sounds. All right, so this one's really bright and happy sounding. That is a steel drum. The sitar is another instrument from India. The sitar is a string instrument, that's right, from India. It was invented hundreds of years ago, but became, can you guess? That's right, famous in Western music in the 1960s, thanks to the Beatles. Let's listen to a little bit of sitar music. That is a beautiful sound. So the sitar is a string instrument like the guitar or the violin, but it sounds pretty different from a guitar or a violin. Next, let's look at the didgeridoo. The didgeridoo is a, what do we think? Percussion, woodwind, or brass? This one is actually a brass instrument used by the Aboriginal people of Australia. The Aboriginal people are the indigenous people of Australia. They've been there for a really long time. Let's listen to some didgeridoo music. All right. The didgeridoo is a very unique instrument. Now let's look at the pan flute. The pan flute is a common, that's right, woodwind instrument in Peru. It is an important part of, that's right, traditional indigenous music in the region. So let's hear a little bit of pan flute music. There are different kinds of traditional flutes in Peru and other parts of South America. That's a really pretty sound. Other unique instruments around the world include the musical saw. That's a really crazy one. A percussion instrument from the United States. And the ocarina, a woodwind instrument in China and Latin America. All right, now let's review. And once again, don't forget to write your answers in your worksheet. So, we are going to match the instrument to the family. Let's start with the didgeridoo. Remember, it is a brass instrument. How about the piano? This one's tricky. Well, it doesn't look like one, but it is a percussion instrument. The guitar Well, we talked about the guitar. It is a string instrument. How about the trombone? We saw the trombone on the train with the band, and the trombone is a brass instrument as well. The steel drum, we saw the steel drum, and you have to hit the steel drum, so that makes it a percussion instrument. The musical saw. The musical saw is played by bending and hitting the saw. So this one is also a percussion instrument. The violin. The violin is bowed. And what kinds of instruments are bowed, strummed, or plucked? That's right, string instruments. The ocarina. The ocarina, we just learned, is a woodwind instrument in China and Latin America. So is the pan flute. Another instrument we saw in our vocabulary, maracas. Maracas have to be shaken. You shake the maracas. So what could maracas be? That's right, percussion. We have the sitar, which is a string instrument, and the trumpet. The trumpet is played with buzzing lips, and it is a brass instrument. All right, finally on page 6, you are going to mark which instruments come from which parts of the world. Number the countries on the map: the flute, the musical saw, the didgeridoo, the steel drum, and the ocarina. And let's not forget the sitar. There is also a crossword puzzle using the words and the instruments that we learned about today that you are going to complete on your own. Now, before we finish up, it's time for a quiz to test what we have learned. There are 4 instrument families. There are 4 instrument families. Percussion instruments make sounds when you strum them or hit them. That's right, they make sounds when you hit them. The didgeridoo is a brass instrument from Australia or Austria. That's right, it's from Australia. To play a brass instrument, make a sound with your lips. A buzzing sound or a blowing sound. That's right, a buzzing sound with your lips. The sounds of string instruments come from their keys or strings. Well, they're string instruments, so the sounds come from their strings. And what kind of drum is a percussion instrument from Trinidad and Tobago? That's right, the steel drum. And finally, for string instruments, which instrument is a string instrument from India? The guitar or the sitar? The sitar is a string instrument from India. Now, what kind of flute is a common instrument in Peru? The pan flute. That's right. The clarinet and saxophone are what kind of instruments? Well, they're woodwind instruments. Now, which instrument is a percussion instrument from the United States? The musical saw or the ocarina? It's the musical saw. I think my picture gave it away. All right, good job, everybody. I hope you had fun learning about instruments of the world. See you next time.